What's going on, everybody? Welcome back to another episode of the Marriage Puzzle Podcast. My name's Thomas.
Hi, I'm Julie.
And in this episode, we just finished up our series, 15 Lessons After 15 Years of Marriage, a couple weeks ago. And last week we did an episode called Honorable Mentions. So that was kind of cutting room floor type of stuff. So make sure you go check that one out as well. But we wanted to, for anyone who may be joining us now, or anyone who's listened to all of them and is, kind of having trouble recalling some of the information, we wanted to do just a quick recap episode and run through some of the top highlights from each one of those 15 lessons that we've made after 15 years. And so that's what we're going to do today. We're just going to run through each episode title, tell you a little bit about a little synopsis of the episode, or one of the best takeaways, or some of the best takeaways in some cases, and just go through them all for you.
Yeah, and when we did the 15 lessons after 15 years of marriage, we said they weren't in any particular order of, best to...
Importance.
yeah, importance is a good word. But the first one we kicked off with lesson number 1, support your spouse. And when you fully support your spouse, we found 3 positive effects for them. It helps your husband or your wife achieve their goals. So it helps your spouse achieve their goals. It keeps their morale when things are hard. And it opens the door to dreaming together. And when you dream together, your morale goes up. And then it's easier to achieve your goals. And so basically, by supporting your spouse, you have a full circle cycle that's a win-win for both of you.
Totally. Number 2, I get an easy short one. It's have sex often with your spouse. The title basically says it all. So you're going to have sex often, but specifically with your spouse. We wanted to really make sure that was important. And this one was cool. We had a special guest on the episode with us, Dan Purcell from Get Your Marriage On, and creator of the Intimately Us app. And so it was kind of an interview episode, so we asked him a lot of questions. So make sure you go check that out and hear more of what he had to say about that, about having sex with your spouse, and just do it.
And the Intimately Us app is something that we use now in our marriage. And so if you're interested in that, when we talked about that in that episode, it's on our website, right?
Yep.
It's something that people can check out if you're trying to search for that app to spice up your marriage in a clean way.
Yeah, marriagepuzzle.com/partnerships is where you can go, and that will have that app listed on there where you can click on it and go download it.
So after that fun episode with Dan Purcell, the next week we went to lesson 3 and we titled it, Intimacy is More Than Just Sex. So yes, have sex often, but there's so much more there should be so much more to your marriage than just the physical act of sex. So we broke down intimacy into like each letter that spelled the word intimacy and what that meant for us.
Yeah.
There you go. So I was for intentionality, and N was nonverbal communication.
So kissing, hugging, holding hands.
Then T was for trust. You have to have trust in your marriage to be intimate.
And be vulnerable.
The next I stood for investment. Kind of wooing your spouse and pursuing them in ways to lead to intimacy.
And building in for the longevity of your marriage.
Yeah. And then M was for mastery. The depth of knowledge. So I was really on emotional intimacy there. And then A was for acceptance, like being able to be you and not worry about being judged by your spouse or anything, just being fully accepted by them. And then C was for care. They should care about your well-being and comfort and safety to be able to be intimate. And then lastly, Y was for yearning, a feeling of intense longing for someone, which then would lead to physical intimacy.
Absolutely. Lesson number 4 was prioritize your spouse. Basically, treating the time with your spouse as though it was $1 million meeting. If you have this is kind of the theme of the episode. If you had a meeting that you were going to go to where someone was going to give you $1 million, there's no chance you'd be missing that meeting.
Right.
And so just kind of taking that mindset for the time that you have with your spouse, that every minute of time you get with them is like $1 million meeting, and you want to prioritize that time.
And the level of focus, there.
Exactly.
Like, not just committing to prioritizing them and giving them time, but making it quality time.
Yep. You're not going to be distracted in front of someone who's going to give you $1 million. So you should treat your spouse the same way.
Absolutely. And so with that, then lesson 5 was be honoring and honest. And simply put, we said be honoring, use honesty, respect your spouse. So don't talk bad about your spouse in any setting. And really just the point there was marriage is a privilege. So it's an honor that your spouse actually chooses to stay with you and love you every day. And therefore, you should be honoring and honest with them.
Yep. And number 6 was titled It's Our Money, So Act Like It. And Julie and I are big proponents of combining finances in your marriage once you get married. And basically going from the mindset, once you say I do, your mindset should change from a me/mine type of mindset to a we/ours type of mindset, regardless of the dollar amount that is in each spouse's paycheck.
Yeah. And then number 7, the lesson there was don't say the quote unquote D word, which the D word we were referring to is divorce. And the lesson is kind of right there in the title. We had another guest on this lesson, special guest with Dr. John Deloney. He joined us to talk about the psychological impacts of threatening divorce and why you shouldn't do that. And so, the main point there was to not use ultimatums and don't say the D word.
Right. Number 8 was love unconditionally. And so we were talking about what is love and what is unconditional love. And we kind of framed this episode out of the Bible verse in 1 Corinthians 13:4, love is patient, love is kind, it does not envy, and it continues. And then we kind of are adding that in to say, it does not envy other people's marriages. And so, you don't want to get envious of someone else because you're only seeing snapshots of someone else's marriage. So make sure that you focus in on yours to learn how to love your spouse unconditionally.
Lesson number 9 in our 15 lessons after 15 years of marriage was titled Be the Best Spouse. So, a lot of times you can look at your spouse and point the finger at what they're not doing right and what they're doing to hurt you or, all this stuff and think that they need to be fixed. And really this episode, we just said, if you want to make a better marriage, make a better you. And so then we gave you ways that you could be healthier mentally, emotionally, physically, and spiritually that then would benefit your marriage by being the best spouse yourself. Right.
And I just want to add one thing onto that is it's not about just being the best you for you. It's also being about being the best you for them. Like they married you and had this, vision and expectation. And so continuing to develop yourself and making yourself better for them is just another way to love them too. So
yeah.
Number 10 was choose your influencers wisely. And so we talked about some different people that you may need to be mindful about of how much you allow them to influence your marriage. These people specifically were your parents, your single friends, or divorced friends. And basically just saying that their experiences are one way, yours are a different way. So you just have to be mindful about how much you allow them to influence your marriage because your marriage is between you and your spouse.
Yeah, I think we had a unique approach to that. So you might want to check that out or go back and listen to it again. And then number 11 was fight for resolution. And so in that episode, we talked about being on the same team. So, a lot of people either choose to avoid conflict or to fight too harshly in one way or the other. And so our points there were you're on the same team, but also don't be passive. Avoid that. Don't be aggressive and fight too harshly, and don't be passive aggressive. So that was kind of a fun point there. And then we also talked about not using the words always, like you always do this or you never do this. It's hyperboles. And also not making personal attacks on your spouse. And so to drill it home, we said fight for your marriage, not just in your marriage.
Correct. And number 12 was apologize and forgive genuinely, which was kind of a fitting follow-up to fighting for resolution. Oftentimes when a fight happens in a marriage, there needs to be an apology and some forgiveness that happens. And so we talked about how to apologize genuinely, which was like a 7-step process that you could follow. And then what it means to forgive, basically to stop feeling angry or resentful towards someone for an offensive flaw or mistake. So apologize and forgive genuinely.
Then lesson 13 was grow together or drift apart. And we had a full list of examples or ways that you could grow together so that you don't drift apart. Mm-hmm. But some of our favorites from that episode, we encouraged you to eat meals together. I think that's kind of a lost art in America these days, of families or spouses not actually sitting down to eat at the same time and just have screens off and have conversations with each other. And with that, I think if you had meals together, you could learn each other's love language. And that was one of our points, and take action steps to love them in that way. Or find a hobby to do with your spouse, and never run out of things to talk about. And so that was some ways to grow together, keep the conversation going, so that you don't drift apart.
Number 14 was remember your why. So this is another one where the title kind of says it all. On this episode, we actually went back and found our wedding vows, and we reread them to each other on the episode.
It was pretty special.
It was. And we did want to make a point in that episode that the wedding vows were not the why. That was just a way that could help you reignite and find your why again. To kind of take you back to that memory. But basically the main point of this episode was that you didn't make a mistake. You chose to get married. So remember the why behind that choice.
Yeah. And then finally, we wrapped up our 15 lessons after 15 years of marriage with number 15, invest in your marriage. And we gave practical ways that you can invest in your marriage daily, weekly, monthly, quarterly, and then annually. And our point there was just investing in your marriage with both time and money, to be able to have the marriage of your dreams.
Yeah, and like Julie said, we talked about some more specific ways to do that throughout the year on different time increments. But another great way to do that another great way to invest in your marriage, I should say, is to get some help with your marriage. Sometimes you're just in it and it's hard to see objectively, and so you need kind of that outside perspective to help you out. So a way that you can do that is reach out to Julie and I. We're marriage coaches, and we would love to have the opportunity to try and help you out with that through our curriculum that we go through to walk you through some various steps in your marriage to help improve it and get it to a thriving standpoint. So you can check out our website, marriagepuzzle.com, and you can schedule a discovery call with us there, or we'll put the link to that discovery call in the show notes as well.
And hopefully you've learned from these lessons as well. These are just a snapshot of some things that we had to learn the hard way in our marriage, or that we've chosen to learn, so that we can go from feeling overwhelmed to being secure in our marriage. And so hopefully they help you, or if like Thomas said, you want to dive deeper in these topics with us, we'd love to meet you over Zoom.
Yeah, thanks so much for tuning in to this week's episode of the Marriage Puzzle Podcast. As always, episodes release every week on Mondays. You can find us on Facebook and Instagram at Marriage Puzzle. And if this is your first time listening to us, thanks so much for checking us out. We really appreciate it. We hope that you're going to subscribe to the podcast, and make sure you go and leave us a review and a rating on the podcast to help us reach more people. And as always, we look forward to you joining us next week, where together we'll work on marriage, one puzzle piece at a time. See you later.
See you next week.